Well, a very good afternoon and a warm welcome to all our participants present here today. We are extremely sorry for starting late, but let's get to the session. Employers use diversity and inclusion initiatives for both compliance obligations and to increase the overall bottom line with a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive workforce. Developing a DNI initiative involves four main phases: data collection and analysis to determine the need for change, strategy, implementation of the initiatives, and evaluation and continuation. Let's hear it from our guest today on what are the challenges organizations face and how can organization prioritize DNI initiatives in their organization. HR Association of India, in association with Marching Sheep, welcomes you all to the DNI series. Marching Sheep is an HR advisory firm founded in 2013 with an objective for enhancing profitability and productivity through customized and aligned people management processes, structures, leadership, and diversity interventions. It works with clients across industries on gender, generational, sexual orientation, and disability diversity. It has been judged among the top five global brands and leaders in 2021 by Digital Life, among top 25 HR firms in India by Business Connect, and among top 10 in Delhi NCR by Silicon India. To know more about HR Association of India and Marching Sheep, I would request all our participants to visit the link and details posted in the chat window. Request all our participants to kindly follow the webinar guidelines mentioned in the chat window. It's my privilege to introduce our guest for today, Ms. Shobha Pandey, Regional Talent Management and Diversity Leader, John Deere. Ms. Shobha comes with overall 19 years of human resource experience in progressive responsibility spanning areas like talent acquisition, talent management, development, HR strategy, diversity and inclusion, compliance, and employee engagement, to name a few. A VUCA-ready HR professional, Shobha has been in senior management roles since the last 11 years and has handled progressive HR leadership responsibilities, including conceptualizing, understanding, developing, implementing, integrating, and managing HR programs, initiatives to accelerate business goals. You can follow her on LinkedIn. The link for the same has been shared in the chat window. Now I'll introduce the moderator for our today's session, Ms. Sonika Aron, founder and managing partner, Marching Sheep. Ms. Sonika is among the most awarded HR advisory firms globally and has specialized into strategic HR advisory, diversity and inclusion interventions, employee health and wellness, along with capability building. She has recently been listed among the top 10 women entrepreneurs by Forbes India magazine, and Marching Sheep has been nominated by UN Women for WEP Leadership Awards for their work during the pandemic towards gender equality, emotional well-being, and empowerment. She has worked with companies like PepsiCo, Vodafone, Roche Diagnostics, and ICI Paints in leadership roles before finding her own HR consulting firm. A mother of two, she decided to set up Marching Sheeps in 2013 with a vision of making a difference to people's lives and career and driving respect and equality for all. As a human resource and DNI specialist with an experience of more than 20 years, both in the industry and consulting, she has designed one of the most evolved diversity and inclusion frameworks in India, and with a deep understanding of real issues faced by women, individuals from LGBTQ community, and people with disabilities. Do feel free to follow her on LinkedIn. The details for the same have been shared in the chat window. Without taking much time, I now welcome Ms. Sonika Ron to take over this session. Over to you, Ms. Sonika.
Thank you so much, Peter. And as always, it's a pleasure to be back here again with yet another very close friend of mine, and we've been working with Shobha for quite some time now. So huge respect for her. She's been driving DEI at John Deere, and she's been doing wonders. So I look forward to this conversation, and I'm sure there will be great insights for everyone to take away from this conversation. So welcome, Shobha, to this platform.
Thank you, Sonika, and look forward to catching up and learning together.
Super. So let's dive straight into the conversation. Shobha, you've been doing this for a long time, and we've been talking for a long time together as well, and on various dimensions of diversity and what can be done and what needs to be done. Tell me, what does DEI really mean to you personally? Why is it so important?
Sonika, thanks for the question. I think it's such a private question and such a nice one because it doesn't put the pressure of you being right and wrong, right? Because it's a very personal question. It was only yesterday I was in a conversation in some other forum, and where we were having conversation on various topics, and one of which have stayed with me is, so I think in earlier times, I would have given you a definition of diversity, inclusion, and then representation. But today, if you ask me, what does it mean to me? For me, it's the tandem between the head, heart, and the hand. And I'll just quickly clarify that. So the head is really that knowing that DNI is important. I think everybody is there through the head. Everybody knows that it's right thing to do. But getting the hand also in some cases easy, right? So, tokenism, you are holding events, you are conducting sensitization, you're doing bias training. But heart is where the real work is, right? Because it can take long time. It's deep behavioral changes. It's something which comes from within for you to accept that diversity is a given. Who is part of your inner circle, that as small as that how are you promoting people as a manager? Or how are you exposing people to opportunities? So for me, diversity, inclusion, and equity is more about where your hand, head, and heart are all working in tandem with each other. So I'll pause there.
That's so beautifully said, because very often that is where organizations flounder, where it is a stated intent, but it is really not an intent. It is simply stated because it is seen as a good thing to do. Everybody is doing it, so let's put it on our website. But is it really being followed? Is it really being driven? Are people really believing in it? Very often we find that as we go down the line, as we go across functions, there are questions being raised on what is in it for me? How will I run my team? When my female employee goes on maternity leave, I will be left holding the can and chasing targets. So why should I do it? So you're so right. It is really that tandem where, there is complete, the head and the heart and the hands are completely in sync. And we all believe that it's an important, critical thing to do. So what, according to you, are the challenges that limit us, to drive DEI holistically at an organizational level, at a global level? What are all the challenges that come our way?
So great question again, Sonika. I think as a HR practitioner or a DI practitioner, I think the on-the-ground challenges can be on a continuum, right? So what I mean by that is they can be very small and minuscule to they can be very massive and big. By small and minuscule, I can mean that, something coming in the way, you're not getting the schedules up, calendaring is an issue, getting people along is an issue in the terms of getting for a session, booking. But the bigger issues can be, really getting the hearts of the leadership together, right? And I'm not being biased to leadership because I think every individual can influence DI at workplace, but leadership, because they are in position of what I say, disproportionate power to influence creating an equitable workplace, right? So to hire people, to develop, to promote, and so on and so forth. So the bigger problems could be really getting the hearts together. People don't only do tokenism, then say that, yes, I sign up as a leader to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion, but really doing something there, that when actually a position comes, or when it comes to really promoting, you are being considerate, or at least you are interrupting or challenging the biases. So the problems can be umpteen as a HR practitioner. What I want to tell is that you need to figure out, like Pareto principle, that which is the 20% of the problems which you, if you solve, will help you sort the 80% of the thing. And I think as a very early start, and I know you've not asked the solution, but setting up the right ecosystem, whether it is an ecosystem of internal employee resource groups, or having a structured team in place which is impacting DEI, or identifying learning partners like you or anybody else who can bring their expertise, right? So sometimes you cannot just rely on your own knowledge or know-how of how to influence DEI. So you'll have to reach out to partners who can guide you in the right direction. And of course, choose what you want to engage them in, because at the end of the day, you know your internal org realities better. So influence what you can influence internally to the extent, and also know when it is the right time to go for asking for external help and support. I hope I've answered, or are you looking for anything further on this?
No, you have. And Shobha, interestingly, you had made great strides when it came to women participation in the workforce. And you are from an automotive industry, right? You are from a heavy engineering industry. Some people might call it a very traditional industry. And in that sense, I could say that you are almost like a torch bearer in that industry segment, where you have also taken a step forward in the inclusion of LGBTQ and people with disability. How did you make, or rather, how did you help get leadership buy-in on that? Because when I speak to a lot of clients, I get a pushback saying that, listen, we've not even made headway with women participation. How do we move forward with LGBTQ and PWD?
Right. And Sonika, it's not easy, but I don't want to take all the credit which you're showering me with. It's really kind of you. But I think it's just that you're working with really great group of people around you, right? So me and the other volunteers and the other team members who are working along, they're equally passionate. And I must confess that the leadership is very supportive. So I think all it took was for us to engage in a conversation called the Men as Diversity Partners journey, where we got them in a structured kind of having continuous conversation over a 3-month period in a frequency of 15 days, coming to talk together on various topics. And that kind of culminated into formation of our ERG for Rainbow. Because once you have the ecosystem in place and the leadership buy-in, a lot of things are self-managed, if I can use this word. So I think for me, if I have to answer your question, there are 2 things. One is the leadership buy-in by getting them in a formal conversation. So, that is where, you have them talk to industry people, people who are like us and who are doing similar work, where you can learn and that it's not that difficult. And of course, we also had the bigger problem to solve that, on shop floor, we are not yet there. We would want to be further better than what we are today, like you did say that manufacturing industry, and still you're pioneering. But I think some of the early work is identifying workstations which are gender neutral. And you can start with having gender as your slice. But once you have gender neutral workstation, really the problem is solved, right? Because then it doesn't matter LGBTQ or some of our factories have done some exceptional work on, some leaders have themselves kind of, I don't know, I hope nobody feels offended by this, but they've tied one hand and leg and kind of tried working on a workstation to see that how difficult or easy it will be for a physically disabled person, people with disability to kind of work on it. So we are getting there. I don't think our numbers are so loud to talk about it, but yes, gender, we've made a headway, and I'm positive that we will make some great progress in the other dimensions of diversity. So I think engaging leaders who are in position of influence through these Men as Diversity Partner conversation really helped a lot to kind of open up, have conversation, and kind of identify challenges, because they are not demons, right? They have some known set challenges in their own heads, which you need to help them navigate through, answer, and some risk which they feel mitigate those risks in advance. So I think that those were some fine steps which kind of helped us move forward.
Beautiful. If I were to decode your answer a bit, firstly, I see a lot of humility in your answer. When you say that um, uh, we are still not there, but we are learning and we are trying things. And I think that in itself talks about a DEI journey. Anybody who embarks on a DEI journey needs to be prepared for this. And this talks about a true intent. What you spoke about, intent from the heart, it resonates in your answer, because saying that we are trying to find out with one hand tied and one leg tied, it talks about really trying to figure out that, is this possible? That experimentation, trying to find out solutions. It is okay if we fail, we'll try something else and find out something else. And that is the true intent. The third thing that you spoke about, Shobha, was that they are not demons, and trying to find out and help them navigate. And that comes from a place of empathy, right? As you said in your first answer, that everybody understands DEI is important. How do you take it from the head to the heart and the hands? Now, that requires empathy to help them break their unconscious bias, break their barriers, and not paint them as villains. When we face resistance, we just can't paint resistors as villains, but make them partners. And the other thing which I have discovered, which works beautifully, while working with you, is that your DEI council has not just HR people, but people from all functions. Therefore, it is not just the HR baby, but everybody's baby, which makes it so much easier to navigate and percolate the message that DEI is everyone's responsibility.
True.
So, wonderfully set up. So if you look at the industry, because you do speak a lot and you interact with a lot of forums, how has, and of course, the pandemic also has had its own impact. How has the needle really moved over the last few years? And let me put in my 2 bits. When I started my career in 2001, nobody was really talking about DEI. There was no POSH. People were not even aware of Vishaka guidelines, right? Even today, when I ask people what existed before POSH, many of them don't know that there was something known as Vishaka guidelines. So you can imagine how committed organizations were to solve issues of sexual harassment if till 2013 November, nobody knew about Vishaka guidelines. So from that perspective, how do you think the needle has truly moved on ground when it comes to inclusion of women, inclusion of people with disability, inclusion of the LGBTQ community?
Yeah, it's a tough question to answer, Sonika, because sometimes the forums you go to, the companies you're interacting with, fortunately or unfortunately, it's like, that's not very diverse. And I will tell you what I mean by that. It's like when you have your friends in your social circle, they would have the same economical status as you, right? So it's something like that. If I'm interacting with a similar group of companies, just a second. Yeah. Similar group of companies which are having similar kind of progress on DEI, have same kind of sensitization, have similar zero tolerance policy for, towards prevention of sexual harassment and so on and so forth. When I look at that surface or that slice, I would answer your question with a confidence saying, we're doing well. I think we're very well to do. The cases are well addressed and people have an opportunity to kind of voice their challenges and issues which they're facing. I think this word which is new, but It was always there. We are talking about is psychologically safe places to work, right? At the same time, there are, and I don't want to say a certain type of companies, but there are organizations who, despite having a posh policy in place, having a third party kind of grievance handling cells in place, they would somewhere go awry or wrong with the way we're dealing with a certain situation, right? So I think it's a journey. We all are evolving. Are we better than 10 years ago? I think you remembered when you started in 2001, and I think right after that, when I started in 2002, I think similar was the case, right? I got my maternity benefit after a year, that because I was handling a case which was where one of the directors happened to ask me that, hey, what happened to your? I said, I haven't got mine, and I did not know that I could go and ask my maternity benefit, right? The 3 months pay for that month. So I think today policies are in place. We're surely doing better than 10 years ago. Do we have a distance to cover? I think yes. I think we should not get in a rush to be inclusive and introduce. I think we need to do a lot of work for gender itself, LGBTQI inclusion at workplaces, and for people with disabilities. I think a long journey to go. And I also want to say the same breath that the amount of time we have taken to come where, at least for myself, I'll say in the last 10 years, the way gender has got more representative at workplaces, we should not take the same 10 years to make LGBTQ and PWD inclusive at workplace. Yeah. I think we should learn from what we've done in that one dimension and kind of exponentially use that learning to do that for other two dimensions. In summary, I think we are getting better. I think the youth today or people who are joining the workforce today are much more sensitized from college itself than for them to come here and discover it. Yes. Thanks to social media, thanks to various other platforms where their education is better than what it was a couple of years ago. So I think we're doing fine. Do we have scope to improve? Answer is yes. I think we will get there gradually. Yes.
Okay. Somebody reached out to me today and she said that, while we converse a lot on unconscious bias, we converse a lot on women participation, we converse a lot on the gap at the leadership level. Why don't we converse around wage gap? Why don't we converse around the fact that for the same position, sometimes women are paid less? Do organizations feel scared to address that issue? Is there any insight? Because the fact is that wage gap exists. And what's your take on that?
Yeah, it's tough for me to answer. I'll tell you why, because I work for an organization which believes in fair pay. So we are guided by a common philosophy, which is gender agnostic, right? Which is diversity agnostic. So it doesn't matter what grade, what band, what gender, which state I belong to, the job which I do, I get pay as per the job, right? But I think yes, this disparity does stay. And if you look at other industries which are not more formalized or structured as far as compensation structures are concerned, whether it is media, especially media houses, or I'm sure some other FMCGs as well in some cases, or and various other industries where it's not organized, right? Where the range can vary from X to Y. I think we should talk about it. I think it's important to have that conversation. And I also want to say, don't wait for somebody else to tell. So if you are noticing it, for example, if I'm noticing that I'm getting paid less, I would go and raise this up to the right person, whoever, at least I will make my voice count for sure. So I think it's time now that we talk about it rather than waiting for somebody to pick up the conversation. Because, it's at personal level, that, for example, if I'm working for you and I know that there is disparity, I must come and talk to you first. Rather than bringing up this issue in a forum where it gets addressed, because solutioning will not happen there.
Yeah.
So I have to bring it up at a place where I will get the solution, or at least I know that I made my voice count. Yeah. And last option, last but not the least, if you're not comfortable with that, find greener pastures. Find places where you are more peaceful with what you are putting in and what you're gaining in return or reward for it. So I think, yes, it does stay. At the same time, I think the accountability to resolve this is with each individual, including us. Also in forums like this, we should have these conversations, at least with people who are in position to influence, who are looking at salaries and compensation and so on and so forth.
I also feel I think there is a lot when it comes to wage gap. There are so many factors. Organization is one part of it, where certain aspects, for example, the process of asking or basing a compensation of what the person was receiving in the previous organization, basing your compensation on that is based. But apart from that, motherhood penalty, or the fact that women themselves don't question status quo, or the fact that at a societal level, when parents go looking for a groom for their daughters, they want the groom to earn more than their daughter. Or when a man goes looking for a girl, he wants the girl to earn less than her. So these are some of the things that we are still battling.
Yes.
So it needs a very 360-degree approach if we really want to reduce the wage gap. And an organization is one part of it. It has to be an overall view. So
I agree.
I have some questions from the participants, which I'll just take up in a minute. But before that, I want to take up one very critical question. And that is that very often in organizations, how do you make DEI a part of a business strategy? How, and John Deere has done it beautifully, I know. How do you make that shift where it stops being seen as an HR baby or something which HR drives or is an HR target, and becomes a business priority?
Great question, Sonika. And I think the starting point for that is, for those who are embarking on the journey, is I think you've answered the question while you asked the question, because I think you said that, how do you not make it look like a HR priority and how do you make it look like a business priority? Answer is very simple. Whatever measures you want to kind of account for as success on DEI, you take that measures from business themselves. So kind of don't go and tell them that, you need to have a 15% diversity in the team at least because today you have 5%. I think as HR, our job is more enabling, right? So all we need to do is that we say that, oh, hey, the industry in which we are operating or the function in which you're operating, in finance function, for example, hey, there are 30% representation in the industry, which means that, industries and functions like you have got 30% of the market where the talent is available. What targets do you want to take? And let the business leader and business function decide that goal, whether it is 15%, 30%, or 20%. Because once that is tied to their own goals is where you will see them driving it the way they want to. As far as sensitization is concerned, I think that's something which needs to be centrally driven, right? Because just taking targets won't help. So taking targets for internal and external both. I think we embarked on something 5 years ago on our diversity development journey, where we have women at various levels go through training programs, leadership development program, if I can put it, journey. And I still remember that discussion very vividly, where we had a lot of conversation where some of the people expressed that the risk of, having quotas in promotion is people may feel that we're not giving promotions to deserving one. And that is when I was like, we don't need to promote females because they are females. I said we should work on the other thing around. If you're not finding the capable, let's work on a capability development program where 3 years down the line, you don't have to struggle for a candidate pool. Your candidate pool has to be diverse and the story and the numbers will start looking different in 5 years. Don't come for results in next 2 years or 1 year. So I think those kind of interventions which needs to be centrally driven, but the matrix and measures of success must be owned by business, whether it is championing on the central initiatives or championing on their function specific matrix, which is important for them.
Lovely question. And I think beautifully said that, you cannot, you cannot impose targets on them, but but show them the reality of what's happening in their function, in their business. And also at times, what I've also felt is that a lot of our consumer and customer is diverse, who we are catering to. Having that picture also is very critical. So one of the questions which has come to me is that how would you advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion with colleagues who don't understand its importance?
Yeah. So great question. And I think, again, your question has a response, because the reason you advocate for it is the reason you must share with them. I mean, the fact that you're getting different views in the team, the fact that you're getting different ideas. I love to tell this story, which was shared by my colleague we were in US for a meeting. And this is about 2008, so many years ago. And he is from Mexico, and he said, so he was just sharing that, Shobha, I happened to, and he has a photograph of that. I wish I had it, I would have shown it to you. So, but I'll just narrate the incident very quickly. So this colleague of mine, he is on a beach, faraway beach in Brazil, which is like a kind of Gaon Kheda beach. It's not a very popular beach like Goa, but it's a very, very kind of secluded beach where not a lot of visitors would go. And he happens to go to a beach shack, like a small shop, which would have water, caps, and all those other stuff which you will typically need on a beach. And the picture which he showed me is in two parts, right? So I will just narrate that to you. So he shows a picture from far away that the shop is closed. It's a small shop, it's closed. There's a sticker on it, and he takes a picture of that. And the second picture kind of zooms in on the post-it, which is there on the shop. And there are three languages. So Brazil, as you know, there's Spanish, Portuguese, and these are the two languages that people speak. So there is three sentences, right? So there is the top one is Spanish, the bottom one is Portuguese. And had you seen the chit, you would have said that it's written back in 15 minutes. So in between, there's English statement which says back in 15 minutes, and then there's Spanish back in 15 minutes, and there's Portuguese back in 15 minutes. Now you'll say, okay, Shobha, great story. What happens with this? Now this sets the business case. In a small shop, a shack shop in faraway beach in Brazil, where there is very less likelihood that the English-speaking audience would visit that beach, right? This shopkeeper is mindful that anybody coming to his shop may not know Portuguese and Spanish and may just know English, right? So this is such a powerful business case and storytelling for telling that diversity and inclusion is important because it's important to our business, right? We are selling our products and services to customers who are diverse, right? Now, come back home, we cannot be selling tractors in Gujarat by speaking English or speaking in Bengali, right? When I go to sell a tractor in Gujarat, I have to speak in Gujarati. So I think D and I have got a very strong business case as far as doing business is concerned, right? It has got business sense. You cannot afford to be non-inclusive to places where you're operating or doing business in. So coming back to the question which came to you, Sonika, I think this particular person can, first of all, strengthen their own knowledge and conviction on why DEI is important. I realized over a period of time, and I'm speaking like this today, and you've called me to a session and where there's so many people ready to listen. So thank you for joining in. I hope you're able to learn during this process. I always get to learn in sessions like these. It took a while for me to myself learn on topics, whether it is talent management or HR or DI, whatever I'm working in. And I've realized, and this is more from the gray hairs, which is colored right now, that, if you do not, if you yourself are not convinced about what you're going to talk about, you'll always struggle with this whole, you'll always have this question that how do I convince this business leader? How do I convince this colleague? So my response is get convinced yourself. And if you're not convinced, walk out of it. It's fine. You can talk about DEI some other point in time when you're ready to talk about it. So get convinced yourself, put your own set of logic in place. And then sky is the limit, because then your conversations will come from a place of, like Sonika was telling, place of empathy, place of humility, place of psychological safety, where you will be able to have the conversation with your peers, whether it is interrupting their own bias on. So I had a colleague who told me that she's one among the men, because I can sit with the men and have conversations. So, in one such conversation, we've had a promotion where they're talking about a woman got promoted and like, she had to get promoted, like she's so good. whatever, diversity, equity, inclusion. And I was sitting there, we were laughing and joking, and I finally asked that, hey, great point, but who do you think would be the right person to get promoted if it was not her? And you know what? Everybody kept silence. So sometimes you just need to interrupt the bias by telling, because people who just want to talk that diversity is letting to these promotions. A simple question where I asked that, who else could have got promoted? Right? And then their lack of word. No, she was the most eligible person to get promoted, hence she got promoted. So I think point is that you get convinced, you have your biased interrupters ready, you interrupt them, and I can tell you that your colleagues will march along with you, more than happy to participate in a conversation.
Perfect. Thank you. The other question is that what is the most challenging aspect of working in a diverse environment? And what is your approach to understanding the perspectives of colleagues from different backgrounds?
Great question. And let me start with the candid response. It's frustrating. You forget other kind of diversity. If you're an extrovert and you're working with an introvert, the very base one, which we all knew since ages, right? When grandma times. 3 children, one of them is very shy, the other 2 are very talkative, the parents also struggling why this one doesn't talk, right? A manager, as a manager, leader, team member, you will still have a similar problem with people who are diverse. And I just gave you a slice of diversity, right? Extrovert, introvert. It could come in various slices: geographical, language, cognitive diversity, and then of course you've got gender, LGBTQ, and people with disabilities, so on and so forth. So the response which I'm giving you is that, I don't have an answer, but I want everybody on the call to know, because you are here on the call because you want to make this 1 hour count for you, right? So please know and understand it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy to onboard somebody who's diverse and different from you. It is not going to be easy to kind of induct such people in your teams, whether you're a team member or a manager. But I can tell you it's rewarding, because I have evolved as a person, right? So I've learned to listen more to people who are thinking different from me. It was frustrating a few years ago. It could be months ago, it could be days ago. But I can tell you, you always have to keep in mind these 2 words, which is divergence and convergence, right? So you have to allow time and scope for divergence, right? Where people are thinking differently, getting all that together. But at workplace, finally, you all are working together to come to some convergence, right? So in any conversations, you have all the debate, all the fights, all the conflicts on this divergent thinking. But once you agree to converge, set some guidelines in the team in which you're working, which are diverse. That once we agree that we will go by the decision or we'll support it, and we will be kind of working together on this. The other is building psychologically safe team environments, allowing people who cannot speak in public to speak in private with you or with anybody who they are comfortable with. And lastly, allowing the teams to bond, right? Remember your school days. I mean, we were all born to work in a diverse teams. In schools, we've got people from different economical background. I know my daughter goes to a school where there is somebody whose father is someone whose father is a rickshaw driver, right? And it is fine that you get adjusted to work with people who, she also gets invited to birthday parties, which is a 5-star hotel, where I would probably think, I've never sent her because that's not my place where I would celebrate a birthday when I celebrate her birthday, right? So I think in schools, we are tuned to work in diverse backgrounds and work together. So get used to that in offices as well. Nothing changes, Airtel has an ad, right? Har ek dost zaruri hota hai, that Airtel ad which says, so in college, you work with different people who are different from you. So what changes when you come to workplaces? Don't let that change. I think you are doing exceptionally well in college. So just carry on that spirit and work with diverse people, and be mindful of that, divergence is allowed, but it has to converge at some place when it comes to making work-related decisions and working together. So those norms must be set. And once that is set, I think working together is fun.
Wonderful. Then there is a person who says, can you give me an example of how you make your direct reports feel a sense of inclusion, belonging, and equity on a daily basis?
Wow, Sonika, this is a very tough question for me. whenever I get asked a question like this, see, I can go on talking because my direct reports are not here in the room. So this question can only be answered by my direct reports because you're assuming they feel included and diverse and things like that. But yeah, I think
I can vouch for that because I work with most of them.
So no, all I can tell you is that I think be deliberate. I think if you're mindful and deliberate, just for example, if I've had a team, I've managed a larger team than this before, and I've had a person who's constantly come late to work, which was a kind of bone of contention for the rest of the people who had to come by 9 o'clock or so. But I think just working from a place of empathy, just being mindful that nobody leaves home to do a bad job at work. I strongly believe in that. And I think that has driven me all this while as a manager and a leader, that sometimes just having the conversation and allowing the person to speak, you will be baffled and surprised with how much they are going through on the back end. And there is so little you can do to make it comfortable for them to feel more inclusive and better at work, because you'll realize that in the difficult lives which they already have, work is a great avenue for them to feel better. This was a time when I was working with a very large team of people, permanent and contingents. And that was my greatest learning as far as people manager was concerned, because I was left humbled because I realized how lucky we all are, and not everybody has the same kind of ecosystem at home or even at workplaces to perform well on the job. So I think I practice deliberate inclusion to the extent I can. It's not that I've not had my days when I'm like, I've said it, this is how it is going to happen. But yeah, I ensure that I have less and very minuscule number of such occasions where the team feels that, she's just taken a veto call. And I try to make more number of occasions where they feel included and they feel that they've done the decision together and they have a voice to say. Last bit, I think in the Corona times, COVID times had provided us exceptional opportunities to be inclusive. So in the virtual times, some people are working from home. And when those of you who are coming to office, I'm in office today, by the way, but I'm not very proud of it. So it's important you do role modeling, that when you say that you are in a hybrid workplaces, you don't boast about being at workplace, and allow opportunity, because somebody is not coming to office, not because they fancy not coming to office. For all you know, they may have kids at home or elderly people to take care of, or for all you know, they themselves may be going through a health condition which will not allow them to go out of the house for some time. So I think all that, working from a place of empathy, and when you yourself have gone through that as an employee, you just know what is it which you don't want to repeat as a manager and what is it which you want to do more often as a manager. So yeah, I hope that answers, Sonika.
Perfect. And I hear you reiterating empathy, curiosity, humility, transparency. I think, very, very, and also you spoke earlier about learning. That learn, if we need to drive DEI, then we've got to learn about it. We've got to, learning starts with humility. So perfect. Then the other question is, how can DEI help to foster an open, communicative environment for our employees?
Sorry, who can communicative environment for the employees? I missed the first line, I think.
How can DEI help to foster an open, communicative environment for our employees?
So I'm not sure I'm following the question, because when the question is directed towards DEI, are you treating DEI as a person? Are you treating DEI as an initiative? Or are you treating DEI as an thought or an idea or a mindset? And in all these circumstances, the answer would differ. But I think if I'm just trying to get a gist of this, I think more inclusive, more sensitive towards DEI managers, leaders, and people are, it automatically is transparent, right? Because you will need to talk more often, or kind of bring up the differences sometimes to the front. So I'm sorry, I didn't follow the question very well. Hence, I can't answer. But it is if it is linked to, there is a business case for diversity. where you will be getting better solutioning and better team working.
Sure. So, Peter, you want to run the poll right now before I take more questions?
Yes, yes. So we'll be running a poll right now. Would request all our participants to kindly share your feedback over this excellent session that we are having today, and would request you all to kindly give your ratings out there.
Sure. While that happens, I think there is one question from Dipo Mitra in the chat box, the last question which I can see. How as an HR can we explain the men employees regarding special occasions where we are prioritizing women-related initiatives, for example, Women's Day gifts, special leave programs like period leaves, etc. I think just explain. I mean, it is not this difficult at all. I think all you need to do is just explain. And the other thing which we did, at least I can tell you, when we are working on period leaves, kind of looking at the possibility of a period leave, you'll be surprised sometimes if you check with the women themselves that many of them don't want period leave. They're fine with utilizing leave when needed, but many don't need this leave. So sometimes kind of just knowing your internal organization pulse and then launching initiatives is key. And second is to answer your question, first part is men as diversity partners, right? So you say that now that you're a diversity partner, how do you think we can influence? So kind of engage them in this conversation rather than deciding what you'll do for Women's Day. And trust me, you'll be surprised with kind of solutions they'll come up with. You'll have a better Women's Day celebration than ever before if you have got many more men planning for that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to offend anybody, but I'm just telling that you'll get a diverse perspective on that.
Yeah. And if I may add on this period leaves, again, coming back to Shobha's point on educate yourself, there is a condition called endometriosis, which causes extreme pain during periods, which 2.5 crores women in India suffer from. So there is a group called Women at Work, which we've made on LinkedIn, and we keep posting these educative articles over there. So if you want to really educate people on why some women need period leaves and some women do not need period leaves, then educate yourselves on why some women need period leaves, why it is so debilitating for them, because there is a medical condition behind it. Just like during menopause, for some women it can become debilitating. So getting that information sometimes can just help you answer these questions. Right. There are a couple of more questions which I received. How can we use our organization's overall strength to our advantage in developing our DEI strategy?
Yeah, that's a good question, but it's just in overall. So the question is a overarching question, if I can say. I think go by peeling the onion, and what I mean by this is that first unpack your own organizational strengths and start to understand which elements will help you form a more stronger DEI strategy. For example, if you're a very traditional old organization, there are certain strengths in that which you can leverage in your DEI strategy, right? Certain values as well. It could be respect, it could be anything else. And similarly, if you are a startup or if you're a new organization, you would have a different kind of strength which you want to kind of call out from your organizational strategy and then embed that into your DEI strategy which you're bringing. So it's a very big question to answer over a call here. It will really depend on your organization and its strategy to kind of cull out what will form your DI strategy. In the same breath, I also want to mention that remember, your internal org realities better than anybody else. So you are in the best shape to form your DI strategy by leveraging your organization presence, brand, or overall business strategy.
Okay, one last question from Tushar. How employee engagement methods work in most diverse teams? How can we create collaborative atmosphere within the teams, considering and accepting the fact that each team member is influenced by the factors like generation, age, gender, geography, and values?
Tushar, thanks, Sonika. Tushar, this is a good question, and I want to leave you with a response which we did some work on around. The engagement model needs to be decoding. I can share what we used many years ago. I think, especially for teams, there are three critical factors when it comes to engagement, which is develop trust and valuing, which means, how well are people developing within the team? How is the trust within the team environment? And valuing, basically, how do you recognize people? So, for example, people who are generationally uh, ahead of me and my generation, they would want to be recognized for the value which they're bringing in terms of, just by appreciation or getting applauded for a thought leadership. And I'm just giving an example, and I may be biased in my examples itself, so please excuse me that, but I have to give some examples. So, and for people generations which are below mine, the newer generations, the millennials and the others, and many of you, I see a lot of men on the call. So that's such a great sign that we all want to talk and learn about the AI. That they will to valuing, they will relate more with, you know, uh, either a paid leave or a time off, or time off to work on something, some other innovation projects, and so on and so forth. So as a leader or as a manager, you need to find out what is it which teams relate to, whether it is generation, age, gender, geography, and what are they valuing. How do you build trust? So, for example, a new mom in your team, you'll be able to build trust with her by being sensitive to her requirement. And doesn't matter you are an unmarried man, you can still build trust by being sensitive to her requirement as a new mother. So just checking on her, that are you comfortable? Do you want more breaks for feeding the kid in the daycare or a creche, and so on and so forth. And similarly, so being mindful about these three dimensions, which kind of form your engagement model, you need to figure that out for yourself. But by and large, what I shared with you was, after a lot of research and discussion which we did, is this is what people are looking for to be engaged at workplace. That I need to be seeing development in my own journey. Doesn't mean promotion, that I'm learning something, I'm developing. Trust, that I trust the organization and the team I'm working for. It's not that when I leave the meeting early, my manager will not have my back. They will save my back. And valuing, what am I rewarded for? What am I being valued for? And what do I find value in, right? Because I may find recognition, something else is valuable, and you may find something else. So kind of being mindful of that diverse needs on these three parameters can sometimes help you manage engagement in diverse teams.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Shobha. I think it's been an awesome. There is something wrong with my voice.
Now
just lost you for a few seconds.
Yes.
Okay, now I'm back. So thank you so much. I think it's been a great session. I think a lot of our audience got their questions answered, and you were absolutely candid. You shared so many insights, and they were absolutely lovely and on dot. So I'm very mindful of the time. It's exactly 4 o'clock. So thank you so much, and over to you, Peter.
Thank you, Sonika, for taking us to this wonderful and enlightening session. Thank you, Ms. Shobha, for sharing your valuable insights and experience on this very profound topic. It's definitely a pleasure being with both of you today, and I'm sure our participants have had a lot of insightful knowledge that they could carry and take away with them. This would have not been possible without Marching Sheep, where we are all privileged to be working with them on this series. I once again would want to thank our dear speaker, Ms. Shobha and Ms. Sonika. Do join us tomorrow for our next DNI session with Ms. Manvi Sushil, Director HR, Avery Dennison, on 17th March 2022 at 3 p.m. That's it from us today. See you soon. Stay safe. Keep learning. Take care and bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Sonika, Peterson, and everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Shobha. Thank you, Sonika.
Shobha.
Thank you, Shyam. We can hereby conclude with today's session.
Sure, Peter. Thank you.